I'm Jen Kleindienst. I'm the Sustainability Director at Wesleyan. I've been at Wesleyan since 2012 in that role, and my role as Sustainability Director is very much project-based. Do a little bit of everything. If it has something to do with sustainability at Wes, I probably have at least something to do with it.
Yeah, so my name is Jeff Murphy. I'm the facilities business manager here in facilities. My role is pretty broad. I run sort of the clerk of the works for the facilities department. I purchase utilities for the university, gas, electric, oil, etc. I look at all of the operating expenses. So I'm the fiscal manager for all the operating day-to-day expenses, as well as all the project capital work that's happening around campus, like public affairs center, science building, roof replacements, all that sort of stuff. I oversee the work order service, and I oversee the rental property portfolio.
Sure. I'm the Associate Dean of Students, so I work closely with residential life, with student involvement and student conduct, and I've been at Wesleyan for 19 years now.
Yeah, so I've been at Wesleyan for just over 5 years now, and my title here is project engineer, but I'm really in charge of all the utilities on campus. So that means electricity distribution, chill water, air conditioning distribution, steam and hot water for heating, telephone, things like that. So a lot of my work in the last 3 or so years has been really converting our steam distribution heating system to a hot water system. We have about a third of campus converted to hot water at this point, and are going to do another, third in the next 2 years, and hopefully finish by 2028. And the great thing about this hot water conversion is it really sets us up for carbon neutrality in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, so the administration was really supportive of these efforts. So we're able to develop the target of converting 50% of our light duty fleet vehicles to electrification or to electric by 2025. And we all sort of rallied around that idea that it was, both reasonable and achievable. And the university finance department really saw that long-term savings as sort of a sensible and responsible approach.
Before we were talking about the SSP, we had plans to be carbon neutral. And we've been talking to administration, faculty, staff, the board of trustees, everybody since 2017, 18, even earlier than that, before I got here, about this infrastructure replacement and then what we do with our steam system that's, starting to fail and needs to be replaced, and develop this, what we call the energy master plan, which kind of outlays not only the steam to hot water conversion, but also how we get to an energy carbon neutral Wesleyan by 2035. And every year, we go to the board and ask for multi-million dollars to do the next phase of hot water. And they're like, you guys are doing great work. We want you to keep going and finish this. And every year we get to do another chunk of 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings. And hopefully in the next 6 years, we'll be done with the hot water conversion. So it's been very positive.
Initiative 3.1 is focused on the just and equitable practices, which a lot of people don't think about when they think about sustainability. And so I think that's a really important focus for this group to take when we're thinking about sustainability at Wesleyan and in the community.
Maybe I'm biased, but I think that this is one of the more important parts of the SSP because it represents 75% of our carbon footprint. And we have a plan to do it. We're almost a third, let's say a halfway through implementation of the hot water part of this plan, and it's going to save us money. So it's extremely important to the university now, financially, and in the long run, if we want to be carbon neutral.
And so this is the very first semester of implementation, so it'll be a little bit of a bumpy road as we figure out what works, what doesn't. Anyone is welcome to join any of the implementation teams. I know that Sunrise, the student group, is working on a sheet to let fellow students know which particular implementation teams are open to having members right now. And the Sustainability Office, through the support of All Britain, has created a student role called the SSP Ambassador role. So that's a space where a student who's not currently being paid to work in some capacity on the SSP. So for example, some students who work at the resource center or within the sustainability office might already be in a paid role, and they might do something related to the SSP. For students who aren't in a role like that, there's an ability to apply to be an SSP ambassador and then work up to 15 hours over the course of the semester on one of the goals that we're talking about, which is pretty cool.
It's really interesting for me to hear back from students about our EV charging push. So we have we're trying to kind of ring the campus with EV chargers that are publicly available for faculty, staff, students, and the community. We have them over at Film. We have them at Freeman. We're going to be putting some. We have one in behind the transportation office, and then this summer we're going to be putting in, I believe it's 12 more chargers over the summer, both level 2 and even a couple level 3, which will be sort of new frontier for Wesleyan. That really high voltage charge where you can get 80% of your range in 20 minutes or less.
So one of the 3 major tenets of the SSP is carbon and carbon reduction, and 70% of Wesleyan's carbon footprint happens to come from energy, like the heating, cooling, and air conditioning that I mentioned. So it's really just kind of was my job anyway, before the SSP came out, to replace all the hot water pipe. And in doing that, we're going to reduce our carbon footprint by 30 to 40% just doing that work. So it's kind of just natural for me to chair the carbon section of the SSP. So I think the way that students can get involved is to really just understand the plan. The energy master plan's on the website, on the sustainability site. Go look at it, and just get the word out to faculty, to staff, to incoming students, to the administration, that this is something that's important to them, that carbon neutrality is important to them. And then from the other aspect, on the more political side, are there funding opportunities out there? So Wesleyan is kind of cutting edge when it comes to this carbon neutrality. There's a lot of schools that have the same plan as us, the hot water conversion, the geo exchange. But there's not a lot of schools that have started doing it yet. And we're 4 years into it now. And there's just not a lot of grant and incentive money out there, because I think we're a little bit ahead of the legislation. So it'd be helpful for students to kind of get the word out and see if the legislation and the incentives can catch up to the work that we're doing.
Students are critical to the success, mostly because they represent the largest number of people in the Wesleyan community, and they're here 24/7. And so they really can have a huge impact on the success of our sustainable practices. And so I think the way that we'll know if it's working is if we're starting to reach some of those goals, because the goals in the plan are very specific. And I also want to emphasize it's not just on the students, it's the faculty and staff are also critical in its success, because it's things that we all can do. It's making sure that we're turning off lights when we're leaving offices and rooms, and making sure we're adjusting our heat or our cooling so that it's not being wasteful. It's not being wasteful in food, whether it's in the dining hall or when we're holding events and programs for other individuals, that we're mindful of how much we're ordering, and we're mindful of waste that isn't used. So it's important that we're all involved in it, but students can be a real driving force in that movement.
Well, I think for me in facilities, I've always thought of it as sort of like a Venn diagram, right? So we have facilities management, operations, effectiveness, and sustainability. And my goal is to kind of hit that point where we're overlapping between effective operations, responsible facilities management, pushing the university and our community towards a more sustainable future. And that means energy efficiency. That means reducing or eliminating fossil fuel use for heating, cooling, and electrification, the expansion of renewable energy, and certainly this fleet electrification kind of falls into that same category. Good use of university resources gets our folks into quality new vehicles, and then helps us achieve our sustainability goals.
I'd love to see us reach all the big goals as well as the smaller objectives that we set out in the SSP. Overall, really just want sustainability and thinking of sustainability in a very holistic way. So not just what can you do for the environment, but thinking about the human side. I would love that to be just part of what everyone thinks about on a daily basis. So you're paying attention to the world around you, whatever human and non-human creatures and the earth that you're on and the air that you breathe, that all of those are part of what sustains us physically, mentally, emotionally, and that we're doing all that we can to help make the world a better place. It sounds kind of cheesy, but very much what I would love to see the future of sustainability at West look like.
I think the most important thing is that it becomes a fabric of our everyday life, that it gets to the point where we don't have to think about it, that we know to not be wasteful in what we're doing, that we know to be aware of different impacts on different members of the community as to whether or not they've got financial resources for it, that we're aware that sustainability impacts different groups of people differently, and that we're all doing whatever we can to do our part of it. So also moving forward in continuing to make these things that become habitual for us, that we don't have to think about not being wasteful, about choosing sustainable actions. And so to me, that's really what Wesleyan in the future will hopefully look like.